Fine. So today we're going to be talking about vulnerability, and the idea is vulnerability in men a good idea? Should men be vulnerable or should they not? So there's a lot of controversy that's been spoken about. People like Andrew Tate, Red Pill, kind of talking about vulnerability not being good in men. However, we obviously disagree with this. So yeah, we're just gonna have a conversation. Let us know what you guys think as well. So, do you think men should be vulnerable?
No, dangerous, dangerous thing to do. Yeah, I think being vulnerable is like it's the way that I've like transformed my life. To be honest, from like lonely, depressed, unhappy to like connected and kind of more free in my issues and just happier. But obviously, what's the word? I pick my battles. So like, generally, I'll like make sure I feel safe enough before being vulnerable.
Yeah.
But with most people, I think generally I am safe. Like, and if someone kind of uses my vulnerability against me, I'd rather have risked kind of like opening up than never open up. And I'd rather risk opening up and like getting hurt or whatever, and someone showing their true colors really. Because if they use their vulnerability against me, or like my vulnerability against me, or if they see it's weak or whatever, and it's kind of like I feel like they're showing their true colors, and there's someone that I don't want in my life.
Yeah, makes sense.
So it's actually quite a good way of like figuring out who I want in my life and who I don't.
I guess the discussion people are saying is like, as a man, if you're vulnerable, you're showing a lot of emotion, but then the counter argument to that is people will kind of exploit that. Like, say you're going on a date and you're being vulnerable with someone, and then they're like, "Oh, okay, that's so nice, thank you for sharing." But then the same person might not be as attracted to you because they might think, or they might use the thing that you're vulnerable about against you down the line. Does that make sense?
Sounds like a horrible person. Why would I want them in my life?
Fair, yeah. That is a good point. Fine. So you would say, arguably, that vulnerability for you has helped you transform the most. I guess we were talking about this earlier, but it's also helped you become more of a man. I guess, how does vulnerability play a role in you becoming more of a man? And like, is there a link in that sense?
I guess so. Like, it's just getting real about stuff. Like, getting real about when I'm sad or upset. Getting real about all the emotions I'm allowed to be. It's funny that like anger isn't seen as vulnerable, but like sadness and those kinds of, and grief and loneliness are seen as vulnerable. I don't really understand that.
I guess when you're, from what you're saying as well, like being vulnerable, it's not like you're being led by emotions. It's almost like you're stating emotions out. So in a way, you're being more real. You're being more honest, and you're just saying it how it is. It doesn't mean that emotion you're allowing to just take over your life. It doesn't mean you're expressing yourself in an emotional way. You're just saying how it is, and then you move on with it.
I mean, aren't everything like? Isn't everything like an emotional expression? I don't know. I don't see it. I express myself. And like, is that? I don't know. What's the difference between I guess what they're trying to say is it's like the difference between like, oh, I'm so upset, and like I'm upset and blah blah blah, and it's like whatever's real at the time. Maybe I do feel in the first one, and it's like like
fine, but I guess if you're like that all the time and you're expressing yourself like on an emotional level, and you're just like and like you have no control, it's almost like, yes, you're being vulnerable, but then at what point do you take control of those emotions? Because if you're just constantly like that, I'm sure in other areas of your life it's not going to be helpful. It's going to disrupt the way you think. In a social setting, it might not be appropriate all the time. Yes, there might be now and then where you want to be vulnerable, but I guess what I'm thinking is, in certain situations, like say in an interview, you can't just emotionally erupt. It might not be useful.
Yeah, jobs are a different kettle of fish. and I don't know. I also feel like what's real is most important, and even if the job they don't like the way I've expressed myself and I'm being real,
Yeah.
then why would I want that job? Surely I'm just gonna get kind of stuck in this place where I'm not allowed to be me.
Fine. Yeah.
And I don't think there is control really. Like I don't think I've ever been able to control anything. I've got like an illusion of being in control, but generally my emotions are kind of like they come and they go, and it's like I don't have much control. Like all I can do is like really be with them, and then generally they'll go quicker or they'll pass
Fine.
quicker.
Okay. Yeah.
And the more I can express and be with them, the faster they'll pass.
Fine. Okay.
The more I push them down and don't express them, then yeah, the longer they take to come out, and they might get stuck in my body for like the rest of my life.
I mean, that makes sense. I guess you're not reacting to them. You're not reacting to their emotions, but you're being with them. So in that sense, there's a level of acceptance. There's a level of control in that sense compared to someone who's just, oh, I feel sad. I need to get rid of this sadness, and then they start screaming or crying, but they haven't fully understood that emotion, what they're going through. If that makes sense.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, I get what you mean in terms of control. Then, although I would argue like sometimes the emotion can't be controlled.
Fair. Yeah.
For me anyway. But yeah, generally I can, like, you know, if I need to cry, then I can hold on to that cry and I can go and take it when I'm on my own and I can express it then.
Fine. Yeah.
I don't need to generally express stuff in the moment.
Okay, and then let's say, I guess, in a relationship setting, so I agree with like everything you said. I guess I think you should be vulnerable, or you should at least have a space where you can be vulnerable. Maybe not all the time, maybe not with everyone you see, but just someone that you feel safe with, and maybe even someone who's not in your family or immediate friendship group, or maybe don't even your partner, because that way you're not just bombarding your partner with everything that you're feeling. Does that make sense? So. As long as you're comfortable being vulnerable, I think you should have another space where you can be vulnerable, like a mentor group, for example. But I think what I was going to get back to you was, in a relationship, do you feel being vulnerable often is important, especially as a man, or do you feel there's only certain moments when you can be vulnerable, or do you think you should be vulnerable all the time, like if you're with your partner?
All the time, I think. Unless, I guess it can depend on the situation. Like, if my partner's dad is dying, maybe that's not the time for me to tell her how sad I am about my my water tea's too hot or whatever. So I think it's very much in the moment and like on a kind of case by case basis.
Fine.
Like with my partner, like I'm going to be as real as I can be.
And I guess that's because you trust that person. But then let's say you're dating, do you be vulnerable in that situation? Because that's a whole different ballgame, isn't it? Because yes, you want to attract someone who you like, who you kind of get along with, you want to invite them to your world, and yes, you expect some sort of understanding. But I guess we all make assumptions. If someone was just vulnerable on the first date or the second date, all of a sudden you're thinking, oh, maybe this person hasn't got their shit sorted, or maybe this person is emotionally unstable. It might not be. Maybe in your head you think that. Do you think that's a good time to be vulnerable?
I kind of see life in terms of like trial and error quite a lot of the time.
Which is fair, It's just trial and error.
Yeah, and I've been vulnerable from the off with like when in dating, and it's both like brought me kind of like falling in love and also like having my heart broken, and kind of everything in between. So I remember like there was one woman I was kind of dating, and it was like very early days. I think only second, third time we'd seen each other, and I told her that there were fireworks going off in my heart, and it's because it came to my head, and I was like, fuck it, like I was in a period of like I'm gonna be as real as possible. I'm not going to have a filter anymore. And she responded with like some a bit of like, I don't know, like cautiousness or something. But she was also, I think, a part of her really liked to hear it.
Oh, okay, yeah.
But later on, like when I told her we were dating for a bit more, and then I told her I need some space, and she said, "Oh, what happened to all the fireworks in your heart and stuff like that?" And
fine, yeah.
so that was painful.
Of course, yeah. So she used it against you in that sense.
She did. Yeah.
Do you regret it then using it?
No, I don't. Like I learned from the experience. I got to see her true colors. Yeah, it was painful, but I'm really glad I did it. Like, would I do the same again moving forward? I don't know. Maybe. It feels very much, an in the moment thing.
Fine, yeah. So I guess that makes sense. I guess if you're in the moment and you feel like being vulnerable, you can be vulnerable. Yes, some girls might not be receptive to it. Some girls might use it against you, but either way, you will never know until you try.
Yeah.
And if that person is receptive and they're understanding, that's even better, because all of a sudden you found someone who's totally understanding, who's totally accepting.
Yeah.
And that shows that person has like a great character as well, I guess.
Yeah. And like, I don't think I'll be able to suss out which are the people that I'm on a similar wavelength with, if I hadn't gone to the other extreme of like, because I used to be very, very filtered, and I've kind of feel like I've gone to the other extreme where I'm totally unfiltered. And now I feel like I'm finding more of a balance. And
fine, yeah, that makes sense. Because when I was starting kind of my trying to build confidence phase, I used to do public speaking. I used to do all these things, and like the key core theme was like be vulnerable, and I would just say stuff, and I would meet new people, and I would just let me be vulnerable. And then I started to realize actually there's certain places or certain people you should be vulnerable to, and certain people you shouldn't. But I would have never known unless I experimented and went to the other extreme end. So I guess you need to understand both ends. And some people are super non-vulnerable. They don't speak up. They just kind of they look emotionless. And those people should probably just be more vulnerable. Whereas people who are a bit too vulnerable should probably start to have more boundaries and start to understand when they shouldn't be vulnerable, when they kind of should hold it off.
Yeah, I mean, why go to kind of like a sociopath and like open up my heart to them? Like asking for trouble.
Exactly. Yeah, might end up dead. Yeah. Any other things on this topic? Vulnerability in men.
I guess it's like the whole it's this whole soundbite thing is what I'm really learning through like our talks and stuff. It's like life feels so nuanced, and it's like all men shouldn't be vulnerable. It's like or all men should be vulnerable. It's like both of them, they're kind of as extreme as each other. And life always feels so like nuanced and in the moment. And I guess that actually feels part of like being an adult and responsible, conscious adult. It's like being in the moment and not having rules about how things work. It's like in the moment what feels true and what feels, healthy, and what feels good to me, good to them, and kind of making that decision rather than coming up with these arbitrary kind of rules.
I guess it's trying to understand that there's always going to be polar opposites in life, and probably the well-balanced man is probably the one you can go from one end to another. But equally, through that stage of childhood where you're growing up, it's good to explore different areas, because you will never know what the balance is until you go to opposite ends. And I guess that's part of growing up and becoming a man. And some men just grow old and they never do it, but then they become spiteful. They have like underlying rage or stress and all these things, whereas other men are probably way too vulnerable and they end up kind of as the opposite end. They might be a bit more lonelier. I don't know, I'm just assuming stuff, but they might be a bit more sadder.
But at the same time, I've never met anyone who I've felt is too vulnerable.
Good point.
Have you?
never someone who's too vulnerable, but maybe someone who's vulnerable in the wrong social setting, if that makes sense. So like someone might. So I've had like friends talk about money stuff in a social setting, and I'm okay with it. I have no judgment, but then I know there's other people who are judging them. So in my head, I'm like, you probably could have just saved that for me or for another friend, or just like you didn't have to blurt the whole information out. So
Right.
I think with my partners, especially, I'm starting to learn like you can say stuff in a certain way, without saying the whole information. If that makes sense, it's like linguistics, like the wording, and I think that's what I'm learning more about. Is like, like you can never be too vulnerable. I think vulnerability is important, especially if you feel the urge to be vulnerable, you should be vulnerable. But it's also the way you phrase it. Like you don't have to make yourself out to be like the worst person ever, or like you don't have to just say everything out and like emotionally blurt it out. You can just kind of phrase it in a certain way that allows you to kind of express it, but equally allows you to kind of feel more relieved.
And I also realized we didn't talk about like how amazing it is when like being around vulnerable people. Like I love it. Like at the men's groups, like if there's guys who like open up and like cry about stuff, or you know, just a bit very intimate about stuff, it's like it's amazing. Like I love being around that, and like I'd never want that to be like shut down.
For sure, yeah. And I think like I guess in terms of spaces, like that's what I mean. Like vulnerability in certain spaces is amazing. Like men's group, you go there like once every 2 weeks. We could do that, and it's amazing. Yeah, like you said, and someone else being vulnerable has a shift on you as well, especially in a personal setting like that where they're vulnerable. They just express themselves, and all of a sudden it triggers something inside you. And you're like, oh, like maybe I feel the same way, or maybe I have similar emotions and experiences that I haven't expressed. So yeah, in the right spaces, vulnerability is beautiful. For sure. Anything else you want to add? No? Perfect. I think that's it for this episode. We'll catch you the next one.